Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners. The date is March 15th, and the time is about 9:10. Roll call.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibarra, Glazier, Hara, Ninberg, and Woods Gray are present, and we have a quorum. Madam President.
Thank you. Flag salute, Mominous Evans.
Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who devote their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you.
So we start, as always, with Commissioner comments.
Okay, Commissioner Woods Gray and Commissioner Glazer and I attended the retirement party for Chief Marueta, and his mother was there in her early 90s, and we learned about he was one of 9 children, and but he was the third boy, and he was named after his dad. And his mom indicated the reason was that apparently early on, everyone pronounced his dad's name Mary Ruda, and they didn't feel it was appropriate, for another, child to have to bear the brunt of ridicule and everything else that apparently his dad had encountered, and but times changed, fortunately, and so there was a point at which they said, actually, Marueta, I think that'll work, and so that's why he was named. I also learned about the great golf skills of Chief Villanueva, and and so that was very informative, and also Chief Cass reminded us that he has the same haircut as Chief Rueda, so that was a great event. And then on Saturday, I attended the event, the recruitment event, and it was really a phenomenal event, I thought. And President Ibarra was there with me, and we sat through really a phenomenal presentation.
Yeah, I learned a lot, actually.
Yeah. And so it was actually a great weekend.
I thank you, Commissioner Hara. I can't really remember where I went in the last weeks. It was so it's like I was so on the go. But the one thing I wanted to point out is I did attend a community event. The California Community Foundation had an event, and I was able to watch and observe the inspector, who didn't know I was there, do his job. So it was very interesting that we ran into each other, and while he was working at an event. So that was really nice. My husband was actually honored as a community volunteer.
That's great.
I had a nice visit out with the Fire Station 79s. There was a good crew there, and appreciate them hosting me.
I want to second that the Recruitment Expo was fantastic. Thank you so much, and kudos to the recruitment section. Unfortunately, I had to leave early. But it was incredible, and it gives me a lot of hope. These classes are going to be very diverse, so it was really great. I also wanted to thank Chief Nelson. I got to visit with him in the arson section and got to learn a lot about what you're doing, and I appreciate all the work you're doing and taking care of this as the notes that were the OPM. All the acronyms. Anyway, so I want to thank you all so much for this. It's been great.
So that's item 1. Item 2 is reports of the fire chief.
Thank you, Madam President. On March 2nd, I participated in the IAFF Fireground Survival Program training with UFLAC President Frank Lima, and they had us go through the various events with all our gear on, practice using our bottles in different scenarios and fitting through tight spaces and going out head first of a window out of the second floor down a ladder. These are skills that are derived from line of duty death scenarios. And I have to say, it's been a great partnership. It continues to be a great partnership with UFLAC. Our focus this year with all our new hired firefighters and our youth in all the ranks is a back-to-basics focus on training to keep our people safe and become and maintain our efficiency on the fire ground. So I thought it was a great opportunity to lead by example, both myself and President Lima, so our troops would go through the same program. It's going to take multiple months, but eventually all members of the fire department will go through the survival training. Later that day, I attended the welcome reception for Michelle King, the new LA Unified School District Superintendent, at the Tom Bradley Tower. A great event. I'll also have a one-on-one meeting with her shortly. I want to discuss our high school magnet program and teaching CPR in the high schools. I want to continue that partnership with her. March 3rd, I paid a visit to Fire Station 9 to drill down on the call load issues. Fire Station 9, more than any other first-in district in the city, has experienced the most increase in call load, 14%. And we attribute it to the homeless population in Skid Row. Because of that call load increase, we've accelerated our restoration plan for Engine 209. It was going to be next fiscal year, but we got support from the electeds, and we're going to activate that April 17th. So in 1 month, we're bringing back Engine 209 to help with the call load. On the 10th, I attended the same dinner that the commissioners did for Chief Rueda. Very well attended, very well organized. Chief Rueda was sincerely touched. He had some very kind words. We never saw that softer side of him until he retired. But it was a great event, and I was very pleased to have such a strong showing of support so we could send him out well. He certainly deserved it. March 11th, I attended the memorial services for Inspector Sandy Smith. Sandy Smith passed away unexpectedly. She was an inspector at the time of her passing. I worked with her at Fire Station 94 back in the mid-'90s. It was during the Northridge earthquake period of time. President Lima was a firefighter there, and Sandy touched many lives. She was always so positive and happy and optimistic, and you could tell by the showing at her services. It was a standing room crowd, and we had multiple people outside the room because we couldn't fit. So she really touched a lot of people. I saw her in the elevator here at headquarters a few months back, and she was her same happy, bubbly self. So she will be missed. March 12th, we had the St. Baldrick's fundraiser, and as you can tell, I did not shave my head. There was an offer of 100, and I said 1,000, and I would do it, and nobody stepped up. So we'll see how that goes next year. Immediately following that, we had the Recruitment Expo at Hodgkins Training Facility, like was mentioned previously. Great event. We had over 600 people attend. We had all our equipment out there, a helicopter, fire trucks, fire engines. People are very motivated to attend those, to learn more about our job. We had classroom sessions. Chief Welch and Captain Chick did a great job in educating all the attendees about what it takes to become a firefighter. Very, very well done. Tomorrow is the annual Firefighter of the Year award luncheon honoring Juan Albaron at the Doubletree Hilton. If anybody's interested, that's tomorrow, Wednesday, March 16th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to verbal report by the department on significant activities March 2nd to March 15th.
Good morning, Madam Commissioner, Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, Madam City Attorney, and Isela. My name is Phil Flegel. I'm the Deputy Chief in charge of Operations Central Bureau. I want to share with you one incident that happened coincidentally during Chief Rueda's retirement dinner. March 10th, at approximately 7:45 hours, Los Angeles Fire Department responded to a reported structure fire at 1566 South Rio Vista Avenue in Fire Station 17's first in. First arriving companies found a one-story 100 by 700 commercial building with significant amount of fire showing. The initial incident commander, Battalion Chief Dave Thomas, evaluated the risk assessment and quickly transitioned to a defensive attack to provide optimum strategy and maximize safety to firefighters battling in the blaze. Additional resources were requested, which rapidly expanded this incident to a major emergency. Nearly 150 firefighters were met with many challenges, including a wall collapse, threat of energized overhead power lines, and issues with water supplies. Firefighters did manage to protect the Bravo exposure by cutting a defensive ventilation strip and also staffing hand lines inside to protect the exposed structure and preventing fire from spreading. The fire was extinguished in 2 hours and 14 minutes with no firefighter injuries whatsoever. Furthermore, the fire department was on scene for the next 2 days, mopping up the fire to make sure that the contents were out and taken care of. This fire is still under investigation, and estimated dollar loss is still being tabulated. What I have now is some overhead sky helicopter view of the fire when it actually started going from Channel 9. It's about a 2-minute clip. Kind of gives you a flavor of the intensity and how much fire we had, and I'll point out the exposure that we managed to save towards the end there. So, Cap, if you can hit that.
There you see it, a commercial building.
Stu Mundell is live in Sky 9 with more.
Oh, it's us.
Stu, that looks like a very intense fire. How many alarms do we have? Do you know?
You know, we've been listening in on basically on their TAC channel, but I would imagine that this has already gone major emergency. It's a one-story commercial building out here in the Boyle Heights area. If you know the area, it's actually very close to Sears Soto. That's a huge building right next door. That's going to be the Sears Soto building. So this is off of Soto, very close to Pico Boulevard. Now you can see the number of fire department out here, personnel out here right now. This has gone defensive, meaning that they're basically just trying to keep this fire contained to this one building right there, because look at the size of these flames. This thing is really raging out here. Now, LA City Fire has surrounded this building right now. You can see them actually using that truck right there, just hitting it with as much water as they possibly can. Other units are working their way around the building. We watch this one guy on the ladder pipe right there. Those firefighters, they love these pictures. Very dangerous for those guys, but they are trained professionals, and it gives you an idea of the size of these flames and how huge in the air these flames are moving. Now, those firefighters are down there. Now, they're not just battling this fire, they're battling a lot of heat that's going to be getting close to them as well. You can see that this building stands alone pretty much as an empty lot on both sides, but there are some trucks nearby, and with that kind of heat being generated, they are worried that other structures or those trucks nearby could catch fire. Now, they know about all these problems that they're dealing with right now. They have firefighters all around this building right now. They're trying to get as much water on it as they can. These flames could be seen by this helicopter, by us, as we made our way through the Cahuenga Pass. So this is a very, very large fire. I'm sure people on the freeway, especially the 101 and the 60, definitely can see it in this area right now. But this fire continues to burn. Obviously, we're going to be talking about any kind of safety issues. We haven't heard of any injuries. It's definitely not the firefighters. Unclear if this business was open at the time this fire started. Right now, though, just a massive firefight for LA City Fire. Okay, Stu, as we continue to follow this, I do have a question. This is the Sears
Just
Soto
waiting
building.
for
Do we
the
have any
split
idea
screen to come up. It'll be
inside
here in a
what
couple
may be
seconds. I
fueling
just
this
want to
fire?
show you the
Jeff,
picture
I gotta
that's
be
kind of
very clear. This
reminiscent
is
right there. If you could pause that, thanks, Cap. Kind of looks like the Da Vinci fire about a year ago or so, but it was a pretty intense fire. And that's from the Mount Wilson camera from over looking over LA, but pretty significant fire. And the one thing again we didn't really show, but on that left side of the screen, you really can't see the bottom left side, that building there that's kind of dark. That was actually the exposure. And this is the very preliminary start of the fire, but we actually got lines on that side, cut that ventilation strip, and save that whole building from any damage. And it was a significant save. Really good job by our firefighters that day. So that's it. Are there any questions about this incident at all? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So now we have report by the medical director for the same time period.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Significant EMS incident since our last meeting on March. I'm sorry, I introduced myself. Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director. March 12th at 2200 hours and 91's first in, there was a rollover traffic accident with one patient ejected. Unfortunately, there was one patient declared deceased on scene and a second patient transported in critical condition. It was an incident on March 13th at about 3 o'clock in the morning. A large U.S. Postal Service semi into a restaurant that fortunately was closed. Very challenging extrication problem. The firefighters did an outstanding job extricating the driver of the Postal Service truck as well as a civilian in a small vehicle, and 2 patients transported in critical condition after a long extrication. On March 13th, traffic accident in North Hollywood area, 60s first in, with a total of 8 patients, 4 of whom were transported. And then, consistent with past practice, I'd like to finish these reports on a positive note. On March 8th, in 91's first in, the Sylmar area, we had a elderly female. Husband called up reporting she was complaining of chest pain. We had our fast response vehicle 401, which is our fast response vehicle that's deployed in the Sylmar area for coverage, add themselves to the incident. They arrived first on scene because they're out looking for business, so to speak. The paramedics on the fast response vehicle immediately initiated both basic life support and advanced cardiac life support care, followed by Engine 91 and Rescue 91, and Rescue 18. And due to the combined efforts of the FRV, the engine company, and the paramedic ambulance, they were able to restore pulses on this lady who had gone into cardiac arrest during the call. In addition, in terms of the chain of survival, prior to the arrival of a fast response vehicle, our dispatcher did an outstanding job to walk the husband through providing CPR for his wife. So every link in the chain of survival was strong. When our paramedics and EMTs were able to retain pulses, they did a 12-lead EKG. They transported this patient to the nearest STEMI receiving facility, where she regained consciousness and actually was extubated and expected to make a full recovery. So outstanding save using every link in the chain of survival from our dispatchers, fast response vehicle, first responders on the engine company, and our paramedics. So outstanding save. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to presentations.
Good morning. My name's Daniel Curry. I'm the captain in the Community Liaison Office. The LAFD Strategic Plan of 2015-17, one of the goals in that plan is to implement and capitalize on advanced technologies. And we're here today to honor a work group that was created last year to streamline processes dealing with probationary firefighters. This work group consisted of members of the Quality Assurance Unit, Recruit Training Section, and Management Information Systems. And they came up with 2 innovations. The first innovation is the Recruit Training Application, and this is used by the drill tower or the drill towers, and it reduces drill tower staff efforts in regards to clerical functions, record keeping, and it provides a near real-time determination of the status of recruits. And the second innovation was for the field, the Probationary Training Application. And this is also streamlined documentation of training, which can now be accomplished by station commanders in 10 minutes. And I can tell you, as a former station commander myself, it took hours to do this paperwork every day. And that gives us major time savings in the field, which allows more training to occur, and it also gives better transparency to the probationary firefighters themselves because they participate in the process of documenting this training. And most importantly, this has created a 400% increase in documented training hours, and that allows for the capture of vocational education training funds, or VET funds, and also California Joint Apprenticeship Committee funds, also known as CalJAC funds. So this is a major boon for the department that this work group created these 2 applications. It was very helpful. At this time, I would like to call up the following members. Captain Don Steinman, Senior Systems Analyst Ron Corona, Captain David Smith, Captain David Lucas, Captain Alfred Hernandez, Firefighter Mark McLean, Senior System Analyst Sue Wynn, Captain Anthony Navarro, Captain Nicholas Avila, Senior Clerk Typist Mario Salazar, and Programmer Analyst Joe Goldberg. Captain Steinman, as the elected leader of the work group, could you please come up? I've been told I'm going to let the fire chief speak.
Cap, don't go anywhere. You're next. You know, here's another example of leveraging technology to optimize our performance. And I can attest, as it was stated earlier, that the paperwork that would accompany the probationary firefighter was cumbersome, took a long time to fill out, and we killed a lot of trees. And we've eliminated that through this process. A side benefit was the increase, over 400% increase in our CAFJAC and our vet funding. And we use that money to send people to training and to buy equipment. It's a partnership. CAFJAC's a partnership with UFLAC. We work together and jointly agree on which pieces of equipment to purchase. And there's been a positive multiplier effect from these projects. So I'm very proud of this group. I can't say enough good things about them, and I encourage you to keep thinking about innovative ways to accomplish what we're doing. Thank you all. Cap, come on up. You got the mic.
Thank you. I'm Don Steinman, Quality Assurance Unit Commander. This work group was formed actually a little bit over a year ago, and as the fire chief had expressed, to streamline the process. We felt that duplication was our enemy, so we did everything we could to eliminate any duplication within the fire station. But we also wanted accurate tracking of training, transparency in evaluations, and more importantly, the ability to access it from home and at work. So at the same time, collectively between the Recruit Academy and Quality Assurance, who oversees probationary members in the field, we decided to come up with a system. Ron Corona, Sue Hugh, and Joe Goldberg are the programmers that designed it for us, and they met and exceeded all of our expectations. So I'm very, very pleased and very grateful that we could present this to the field. It's been online, and it's been successful for well over 6 months, perhaps even as long as 9 months, saving tons of time for the station commander, company commanders, so they can turn around that time savings to conduct more training, but more importantly, to monitor the workplace environment. So all these are big pluses to the system. So I want to thank all members that were involved, and most importantly, Ron Corona and Sue Hugh, just in back of us, that did all the difficult tasks of programming and constructing the system. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we're just going to go ahead and hand out the certificates to each member, and then we'll take some pictures.
So, moving on to the consent agenda items. We take them all together.
Let's see. Move to adopt items 4A through C. Adopt the recommendations for items 4A through C.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So, regular agenda items. 5A is report by the department on the status and disposition of matters referred to other committees, departments, etc.
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners, Chief Julie, and Isela. My name is Graham Everett. I'm the Chief of Staff, and I have your City Council and Committee's activity report from February 22nd to March 3rd. There was 3 items that are included in your packet. From March 4th to March 11th, Council was in recess, so there was no additional activities. So if you have any questions about these items, I can refer to those. Otherwise, I have nothing further.
Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So 5B is report. Oh, yeah, motion.
Motion to receive and file item 5A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5B is report by the department on the mid-year budget report for fiscal year 2015-2016.
Morning, Commissioners. Emilio Rodriguez with the Administrative Services Bureau. Fire Department is projecting a year-end deficit of around $7.4 million. This number has trended down from the initial shortfall estimate of $15 million at the beginning of the fiscal year. Various transfers have been requested in the mid-year financial status report to the Council to address shortages in certain accounts, primarily fleet maintenance, overtime for emergencies outside of the city, essentially backfilling some of the overtime that occurred over the fall-summer period, and one-time payouts for members leaving city service. No appropriations are requested from the general fund at this time. The mid-year also included appropriations to LAFD for a 6th recruitment class this year, which began in February, as well as for restoration of Engine Company 69 in the West Bureau. Funds had been budgeted through previous council actions for these purposes in the combined amount of $3.6 million, and are being appropriated to the department's operating accounts through the mid-year report. In closing, the department is closely monitoring all accounts to reduce the deficit to the extent possible. General fund revenues are expected to exceed budgeted amounts by approximately $13 million by year end. That concludes the report.
Two questions for you on this. So on the excess sick time, so is that related to folks who were in the drop program?
Correct. It's right. It's the amount that it is because we primarily have 175 drop exits this year. The norm is roughly 75, 80, which we're expecting to return in subsequent years. So usually the budget amount takes care of that.
I mean, so isn't the point of the drop to know exactly who's leaving? So wouldn't that give us a better? Is there a reason why we wouldn't have a better projection of that, or is it because we don't know how much sick time they're going to take in that or I mean, because every year we know who's going to be dropping, right, or retiring?
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe we requested a higher amount through the budget process last year, but it was among the few items that weren't budgeted. So.
Okay, so this wasn't a failure to forecast. This actually was somebody didn't want to budget for it. Fair enough. Okay. My other question for you on this is on the fireboat haul out. Is that something we get reimbursed by the ports for?
To my understanding, not currently. There have been efforts to,
get that?
Approach the harbor for that, but nothing to date. Yeah, that's an ongoing discussion. Historically, they've given us $250,000 a year for just regular maintenance, but when we haul out the boats, it's very expensive. And we've been in discussions with them currently and in the past to have them pay for that.
Okay. Anything this body can do to help with that? I imagine there isn't, but
not at this time. We're still in discussions.
All right. Well, keep us posted. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Madam President.
Yes.
A question about the mutual aid. There's no assistance from any state agencies or anyone else with that?
The reimbursements are typically collected from the jurisdictions to which the aid is provided, and the for that to be effectuated, the emergency must have been recognized through by the state.
So if they pay us back, What's the overtime for?
This was the
Why do
overtime.
we have a deficit?
Because we had above the norm incidences over, the past summer.
But-
Primarily wildfires outside of.
Commissioner, if I could interject, we send out resources upon request of the state. The state reimburses the city, but it goes to the general fund. So we don't get it credited towards our account, so that adds to the deficit.
And then I also think that because we got a briefing about this from Chief Rada before he left, and we only get reimbursed if there's a declaration of an emergency, right, by the governor. If there isn't, then we still go to mutual aid if it's, if there's an emergency, but we don't always get reimbursed. But that's mutual, so that's why we do it.
In the event we would have a large-scale earthquake, we would call on the state resources to come into the city, and it's the same relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move to comments.
Oh yeah, we do have a comment. We have a comment from Frank Lima, president of UFLAC.
Madam President, good morning. Frank Lima, President, United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, here to speak on the mid-year budget update. And the department's done a good job working to reduce the projecting budget deficit for our current fiscal year. I think it's important to point out, however, that the factors that have caused our current projected deficit were all very predictable. As you said, quite frankly, the CAO's office should have projected these expenses when they presented the 2015-16 budget. The deficit for our apparatus fleet maintenance, constant staffing, and excess sick time were all predictable, and they should have been funded in the budget. Thankfully, the chief has worked closely with United Firefighters to continue to stress to our elected officials in conjunction that we need to have as many drill tower classes as possible. By funding the classes that we have been funding, our exposure on overtime costs has been reducing, and we are bringing desperately needed firefighters and paramedics into the department. In fact, as the chief report points out, we are at a net surplus in our salaries and expenses account because of the savings from hiring and paying people at recruit level pay versus senior pay. I want to also comment on the restoration of Engine 69 coming back and Engine 209. That's in conjunction with the management, UFLAC, talking to our elected officials, shoulder to shoulder. UFLAC's been talking about restoration for many, many, many years, and it was constantly ignored by the fire chief and the fire commission. So we are very grateful that finally we have people in these spots that want to actually advocate for the department and add more versus cut. So let's be sure with the upcoming budget to clearly communicate our needs to the CAO. And remember, we're still the most understaffed big city fire department in America, but we are moving in the right direction, and I wanted to point that out this morning. Thanks for continuing to support our firefighters.
Thank you. Thanks. Do I have a vote on this?
Move to adopt the recommendation on 5B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5C is report by the department relative to the arson and counterterrorism audit. Update report.
Good morning, Fire Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, and City Attorney. My name is Battalion Chief Robert Nelson. I'm in charge of the arson counterterrorism section. I'm here to report on the audit done by the independent assessor on my section. The audit recommended 12 changes or improvements to our section. We are happy to say that we've completed 11 out of those 12. Big bulk of those was our arson procedures bulletins, which there were 23 of them, and they've all been rewritten and updated, and they've been sent to the city attorney for final approval, and then final approval, obviously, by the Fire Commission. The last 3 were sent in very recently, and we've did those last 3. The arson procedures manual, we have an outline. I sat down with Commissioner Naimberg a week ago, come up with an outline. I suspect to have that outline done every 2 months. We'll have a section of that done, and final approval, final for that OPM should be done in August, this August, and then after some approval levels, I think we'll have it ready for submittal in October, sometime in October. Any questions?
Great. So, very satisfied with this report because this has been going on since 2008, and it looks like we're near the end of it. So that's great. So it looks like the only thing we need to do is to finish the procedurals manual.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So, can I just suggest that you work with the independent assessor, the city attorney's office, and to get their assistance to just finish it. But other than that, I mean, the progress seems like you've made a lot of progress and very satisfied with it.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I just want to say I appreciate all the hard work that you've put in here and appreciate the schedule, so that we can, we know when to expect certain parts of the bulletin or certain parts of the procedural manual so we can work together to make that happen. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
I see that the reason 12 thing is not done is because you need yet a need for staffing and subject matter expertise. Is this in place now, or are you still in need of that? Or is that something you're working on in some way that's possible for you to finish it?
Not to keep the question too complex, but we've supported, we were able to hire our 2 clerical staff, which we were down, which was a significant impact. We're still dealing with the CPRA, which is the California Public Records Act. That's a huge impact on our section, and we're trying to manage that appropriately given all our fire reports. Last year, we arrested 117 people for the crime of arson. Those were active investigations. We've arrested 15 so far this year, and we've had 4 fatalities. So we're very busy and active in that arena. So when it comes to doing some of this desk-type work that requires a lot of intense collaboration with our allied agencies, it is a time issue. I'm losing 2 captains. I'm in the process of interviewing for my captains that are now transitioning back to the field. So that's going to cause a little bit of an impact. That's why my timeline's kind of stretched out a little bit. But I believe we have all the pieces in place and the right personnel in this section to accomplish the goals set by the Fire Commission and the Independent Assessor's Office. And I'm confident that we'll be able to finish it sometime in October, August, October timeframe.
Okay. Very good. Thanks.
Okay, move to adopt the report and recommendations for item 5C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. 5D's report by the department relative to mental health emergency responses.
Hello again. I'm here, Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director, to discuss the report on mental health emergencies. This is a very timely issue, given the homelessness crisis in the city and the number of homeless individuals who have mental health issues. And the fire department has taken on taken a large role in responding to these individuals. In the board report, which you have in front of you, there's some background statistics which I think help put this the scope of this problem in proper perspective. That while total emergency department visits throughout the county of Los Angeles went up 15% last year, visits for mental health emergencies went up by 44%. During the same period of time, the number of inpatient psychiatric beds has gone down. So the supply and demand equation has gone in the wrong direction. And sadly, many of these patients who are at risk with mental health crises subsequently call 911 for assistance. The number of patients with mental health emergencies cause a disproportionate impact on our availability to respond to other types of emergencies. The types of care, specialized care that these individuals in crises need is really largely outside the scope of our EMTs and paramedics in terms of professional counseling for mental health emergencies and also in terms of psychotherapy, both for emergent situations and long-term psychotherapy, all outside the scope of practice for paramedics and EMTs. The numbers you have in front of you also are rather striking. We responded to almost 11,500 incidents. There are dispatchers coded as individuals with mental health emergencies last year, resulting in the dispatch of over 20,000 resources, of which we transported 7,000 patients to emergency departments. There currently is no destination or diversion criteria in the County of Los Angeles for mental health patients to psychiatric facilities. So as per the County Department of Health Services policy, even if our EMTs and paramedics identify a patient with no acute medical issues but have an exclusive mental health emergency, the policy stipulated by the LA County Health Services, EMS agency mandates that our ambulances transport these individuals to the closest accessible or most accessible emergency department. Only 15 of the 60 emergency departments to which we transport are LPS designated or have psychiatric emergency facilities. Consequently, we take these patients with mental health emergencies to the local emergency department. These patients require a sitter, which are often unavailable. If there happens to be an emergency department with a psychiatric emergency department, those are often filled to capacity. And unlike the general emergency department, the hospital cannot exceed the nurse-patient ratio in the psych ER. So the percent of transports for psych patients or patients with mental health crises that result in the so-called wall time is much higher than the other types of patients whom we transport. So clearly this is a significant problem where we're taking these individuals to facilities that can't properly mitigate their problem. When we've also met with hospital leadership around the county to discuss our wall time issue and getting our ambulances back out in the street to respond to the next 911 call, what I heard loud and clear from our partners in the healthcare community was that they feel like the psychiatric patients are also having a disproportionate adverse impact on their operation. The typical scenario when we transport a patient with a mental health emergency to a so-called generic community hospital emergency department, that emergency department, when there's an open bed, will see that patient. The physician will perform a medical clearance, and that might take several hours. Then they call a psychiatric emergency team or PET team, which may take many hours to respond. If the PET team determines that individual meets involuntary hold criteria or the 5150, and the patient is uninsured or underinsured, that patient may actually sit in that emergency department for 3 to 5 days, taking up an emergency department bed and also not helping that person's emergent psychiatric condition, often exacerbating it due to all the external stimuli. So clearly this is a significant problem. In terms of our plans and ideas to try to address this growing issue, Chief Terrazas and I have been working with the electeds and our partners in County Health and Department of Mental Health and LAPD to try to come up with some novel, innovative solutions to this problem. We requested and are requesting funding through the Mayor's Innovation Fund to develop a pilot program known as a mobile mental health unit. The concept behind the mobile mental health unit would be this unit would be dispatched on patients identified as having mental health issues through our dispatch system, and it would be staffed by a psychiatric trained social worker or a psychiatric trained nurse practitioner, and that mobile mental health unit would then free up our emergency resources, our paramedics, EMTs, and fire resources on scene immediately. They'd be able to perform both medical clearance and a psychiatric assessment on these patients, determine if they're safe to be referred to a mental health clinic and provide a prescription if need be, or they may transport directly to a drop-off facility such as Exodus, or they could transport directly to a designated psych ER, those 15 designated facilities we currently have, or if the patient meets the 5150 hold criteria, they might be able to determine where the open beds exist based on the patient's insurance status and transport that patient directly to an inpatient psychiatric facility. So we're very hopeful that this novel program will match the needs of these patients with the right level of expertise, free up our resources because, again, it's having these individuals who are obviously in crisis need to have properly trained individuals who have the right training, scope of practice to combine behavioral therapy, psychiatric evaluation, pharmacotherapy, determine the needs, where they need to be transported, if they need to be transported. Clearly, the current scenario, which is largely stipulated by the rules of the county, where we're basically just sending emergency resources, both fire companies and ambulances, and taking these individuals to the closest emergency department, I would argue is really not serving the needs of these patients or the next patient who needs 911 services. And clearly, we're not matching the needs with the demand. So this is a very timely issue. I I'm glad that Commissioner Glazier requested this, and hopefully this will give us some additional traction with Commission's support to explore these potential solutions that get funding. These programs have been successfully tried in other states, again, very successfully. And we have started discussions both with our other partners, such as LAPD Mental Health Evaluation Unit and Department of Mental Health with LA County. And I'm very optimistic that with your support and the support of the electeds, that this program will be the first step to address the needs of this very vulnerable population, and also free up our very, very overburdened, very, very busy emergency resource system to respond to types of calls for which they're properly trained.
So I'm really happy that you're doing this. I'm just having I'm having a hard time sort of conceptualizing what this is going to look like and how this is different from what LAPD is doing. So that's first question. Second question is, I feel like a lot of this sort of depends on resources from the county, and do we know if they're going to increase sort of psychiatric their capacity, like whether it's with mental health clinics or mental health emergency rooms or whatever, because it seems like that's kind of beyond the capacity of what we can do, and we kind of need them to put up those resources if we're really going to address this.
So both excellent questions. Clearly, we can't do this in a vacuum. We have to work with the stakeholders, some of whom you mentioned. The LAPD SMART teams are expanding from 7 to 17, but clearly they're barely scratching the surface. People call 911 routinely with mental health crises or suicidal ideation. We respond routinely, often with PD, but we're often on scene first because there's a lot more of our resources than LAPD in terms of availability. And again, the numbers speak for themselves, how often we're transporting. In addition, if the patient endorses any types of medical issues, if there is a SMART team available and they do respond, they'll then transport the patient in a police car to the local emergency department to get medically cleared. They're also not able to perform the evaluation for medical clearance and prescription of psychiatric medications. So part of this, clearly, we would partner with MEU from LAPD, but even as they expand to 17 SMART teams, it hasn't made a dent in our call load at all. And then again, the disproportionate effect on wall time I mentioned. In terms of LA County, Chief Terrazas and I have had some preliminary, very fruitful discussions with Dr. Katz and members of his staff from LA County Health Services, and they're being very proactive in terms of their plans to expand Exodus and similar types of the so-called drop-off mental health facilities.
Again?
So Exodus is there's one right across the street from the ambulance bay at LA County USC Medical Center on State and Marengo. Mm-hmm. It's basically a walk-in or drop-off mental health urgent care, if you will. So patients can walk in themselves, or the concept would be this mental health unit would be able to determine the patient doesn't need to go to an emergency department, can go to this Exodus mental health drop-off facility. If the psychiatric evaluator, which would be a LPS certified social worker or NP, feels that the patient is indeed suicide risk and meets 5150 criteria for involuntary hold, then they would need to go to either a psychiatric emergency department or a patient psych facility. If they feel like they just need some further counseling, evaluation, and referral, they'd be able to take them directly to Exodus or other types of county walk-in psychiatric facilities. I believe the county is planning to open one at MLK, and clearly this helps everybody, the community at large, whether we transport individuals or they just transport themselves to emergency department. Some of the smaller emergency departments would have less than 20 beds. Routinely, 20 to 25% of their beds are being occupied for days by psych patients. It's not helping the general community, and clearly the psych patients are not getting the help they need. So to be clear, and you make an excellent point, we already have these discussions to work with our stakeholders, the county, LAPD, but to answer your first question specifically, the SMART teams is a great concept. They've established that. They've really set the model for other law enforcement agencies in the country, but clearly the brunt is falling on our department, and we're responding all day long on these types of patients.
Great. Thanks for the report. I appreciate all the numbers in there and the detail that you put in there. So a couple questions here. But on the just sticking with the county for a minute. So you mentioned the DHS policy is not really serving our community, our patient load right now, patient care needs. If you could wave a magic wand, and what would be the changes to county policy that you believe that we should be advocating for?
So it's a good question. Ideally, there'd be increased capacity at the 15 existing LPS certified emergency departments. If that were to be accomplished, then I would say let's put forth a policy with EMS agency from the county that patients who have isolated mental health emergencies, we would divert to the nearest open psychiatric emergency department rather than the closest facility. The reason that the county has not gone down that route right now, for example, LA County USC and Harbor UCLA, with both psychiatric certified emergency departments, were routinely at or above capacity. So it comes down to supply and demand. So if they were to augment capacity at those facilities, clearly the needs of the community and these patients would be much better served by diverting them, just like we divert trauma patients and patients with heart attacks to the specialty centers. That would be the way to go. And then on the back end, part of the reason these psychiatric emergency departments are so overcrowded is the paucity of inpatient psychiatric beds. So it's really a continuum. So when these patients are medically cleared, they go to a psych ER, and they meet 5150 criteria to be inpatients for up to 72 hours. If there's no inpatient psychiatric beds available in the county, they sit in those psych ERs for several days. So it's really the whole cycle. Obviously, I haven't even talked about preventive care, but in terms of our role in the system right now, we obviously have to partner with the county as well as private hospitals. Cedars closed their inpatient psychiatric facility, I think, 2 years ago, based on financial issues. So clearly there's a growing demand for these very vulnerable at-risk patient population. And like everything else, LAFD is there to respond. I mean, we respond to all types of patients, but this is a unique patient population where it's really not something. We could provide additional training to our EMTs and paramedics, but at the end of the day, you need focused, higher-level training to deal with mental health emergencies, as well as be able to prescribe the right medications in the short term and long term as well.
So I want to come back to the training issue in a minute, but I think I understand, which is to say that the diversion issue is a long-term solution, but it doesn't make any sense if the beds are full.
Correct.
Can you help us understand a little bit about how the inpatient clinics could fit into this? And I'm curious, if you mentioned in here that if you have an LPS designated certified social worker or an NP, they can make the decision to divert. Is that true, or what's different about them? Is that because they have a scope of practice that allows a diversion, or what?
Yes, it basically be akin to our nurse practitioner response unit. So they would operate outside the boundaries set forth by the LA County MS agency. It's a completely different scope of practice. So it's a smart team to a whole nother level. They provide the medical clearance, address medical issues, the mental health evaluation, and provide medication either in terms of prescription, referral, transport to a psychiatric drop-off facility or a psych ER. Because the whole set, they're not bound by those parameters as our EMTs and paramedics are.
Got it. And there wouldn't be a way to have a criteria for us where if a patient is medically stable, and correct me if I'm using the terminology incorrectly, but if they're medically stable, which is to say their vitals are stable, our paramedics could not make the decision to say, let's divert you to an inpatient psych center, or would that be a DHS or a state change?
So they wouldn't be able to divert to an inpatient psychiatric facility. So
walk-in. I'm sorry.
The other walk-in. Certainly, we could examine that. I mean, obviously, the risk is going to be. It's often difficult to discern what's functional, what's organic. Meaning, is it a mental health issue or is it an underlying medical issue, such as sepsis, toxidrome, cold head injury, things like that?
Changing.
So, not that either one would be 100%, or say paramedics can't do it, but there's an increased level of risk there. Mm-hmm. So, to bring a higher level of medical training vis-a-vis an NP, doing both, or doing the medical component with the LP certified social worker, and those are the people who currently comprise the PET teams right now, to focus on the mental health component. I think it would greatly expand our options. And if we combine both dispatching them on the front end from a wide radius from the CAD, as well as allowing our members on scene when they believe they have a patient with a predominant or isolated mental health emergency, just like the NPRU, they request a mental health unit out. Our folks are released on scene to become available for the next emergency, and then we could actually do a proper evaluation of this patient and deliver them to the right care that they need.
But we don't have, if I'm hearing you correctly, we don't have sufficient clinic capacity either at this point. Is that true?
At this point, no, but we've had preliminary discussions with the few that exist, and they're completely amenable to trialing this program, as is the county, because we would have a different level of both medical evaluation and mental health evaluation. And so all the pieces are there. As President Bauer mentioned, we've been working with our stakeholders, and I think the time is right, basically the needs of this patient population, which is growing, and the increasing need of just in terms of our call load in general and the wall time. So clearly this is a time-critical issue, which is a win-win for everybody. The patients with mental health emergencies are better served. The rest of the patients we served are better off, and also frees up the emergency departments, because if you think about your local emergency department, if it has 15 beds, I think 3 or 5 of those beds are someone sitting there for 3 to 5 days with a mental health crisis. Is almost untenable. And most of the community hospital EDs right now are seeing 25 to 33% increase since last year. So there's a number of variables that have really combined right now to make this an extremely time-critical issue. And I think working with the stakeholders and the preliminary discussions we have, I'm very confident this would be a very, very successful program. And then, as you mentioned, I think the county then would be more comfortable in making the investment to expand these drop-off facilities, because the county also wants to have more capacity so these patients don't end up in their main, the ERs, to mix up patients having heart attacks and strokes with patients who are decompensated with mental health emergencies. It doesn't serve anybody.
So I have more questions, but I also want to, in case one of my fellow commissioners want to jump in here, otherwise I'll keep going.
Oh, I just wanted to know, just one question. What is the timeline you expect for this, to get this unit implemented?
So we requested a mobile mental health unit with part of the city's homelessness initiative about a month or two ago, and we're also submitting another request for funding through the Mayor's Innovation Fund. So, and there's obviously also personnel issues. So I'm always overly optimistic timeline. I think if we can get it done realistically this calendar year, I think that would be a huge victory. There are a lot of pieces to this, and so if we can get this done by January 1st and set this up correctly, I think I'm hopeful that will be doable, and I'm absolutely confident it will be incredibly successful, and they'll be making a compelling argument to expand the program. And obviously, I don't know if the chief has other comments on the timeline, but I think a lot of the barriers we've overcome setting up our first nurse practitioner response unit. So I think some of the changes with the mental health unit are not as insurmountable because we've already broken the mold with the NPRU. That's why I'm optimistic we could achieve an aggressive timeline.
Okay. And what is the budget you expect? I mean, the amount?
So a rough estimate, very rough estimate, the budget. It's probably comparable to an NPRU. So it's probably if you assume the ambulance, we use a reserve ambulance or some other type of vehicle like a reserve Suburban if we have one. Not including that, probably $350,000 or less, which is about the same as what we spent to spin up our first nurse practitioner response unit.
But that's basically just the trial, right?
Yeah, the two salaries, so either the LPS certified social worker or LPS certified NP, plus a firefighter, paramedic, or firefighter EMT partner, and medical equipment.
Okay. I'd just like to commend you for beginning to work in this direction, because when I first came on, we started talking about wall time, and I talked to emergency rooms about wall time. It all led back to mental health patients. That's what they would say. So this is really a good move, not only for the staffing of the emergency rooms and patients, but the mental health patients who really need to have some help. Only if they are suicidal do they keep them for the 72 hours?
No, ma'am. There's actually 3 criteria. They have to be a risk. Basically, they have to be a risk to others, a risk to themselves. So homicidal, suicidal, or gravely disabled. And that's where I think a significant percent of the homeless population fall in that, where they determine to be gravely disabled, that they can't take care of themselves. So if the PET team or psychiatrist believes they're gravely disabled, they're also put on a 5150 72-hour involuntary hold. So any of those three criteria.
That's good. And I'm happy to hear about the community-based programs, because many of the people are in the communities, and if they could get to some place that's nearby, that would be quite helpful too, I believe.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, I was just curious. Only 15 of the 60 receiving hospitals currently are LPS designated, and the geographic distribution of the LPS hospitals, does that fit with where the homeless, mentally ill reside, or near Skid Row? I assume near Fire Station 9. And the other question is, what's currently happening with the 45 receiving hospitals that are not LPS designated? Once they run out of the 5150, do they convert to 5250, or are they able to, or what are they currently doing? And I'm suggesting they probably discharge patients, and then those same patients return.
So excellent question. It's a combination. To answer your first question, these patients are. I haven't GIS mapped this, but when we broke it down by battalion, actually just by dispatch, majority are actually Battalion 11, and the second highest battalion was Battalion 1. So MacArthur Park, Westlake area, number 1, and Skid Row, number 2. The number 3 was Battalion 18, kind of the mid-city area. Clearly, with Cedars going down as inpatient psych facilities, there's a huge void there towards the west side. The other question you asked was,
what currently happens
once
you run out of the time in terms of 5150?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Do they convert to 5250, or are they able to?
So combination. Often the patients exceed the 5150. They're there more than 3 days. They just keep them, and they keep sedating them, which is a risk of violating that patient's rights, civil rights to be free, versus the risk of going out and either committing suicide or harming someone else, or they may release them. So it's highly variable. It's up to the physician, but it's not uncommon for these patients to be in that hospital ER bed for 3 to 5 days. Huge impact for everybody.
Sorry, what was 5250?
That's a 2-week hold.
That's a 2-week hold. Okay, 5150 is a 3-day hold.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Just turning to LAPD, so they have their smart units, right? What do they do when they roll up on a patient I don't know what they call it. They respond to someone who has who has some of those issues. What are those smart teams able to do? Are they able to then transport to either a 5150 type situation or to a clinic?
That's correct. Often there's none available, then the officers on scene may request an RA or handle. 85% of the patients or individuals that the SMART team responds to, this is from LAPD data we met with MEU, 85% of those individuals are placed on a 5150 by the SMART team. The SMART team is a specially trained uniformed police officer trained with a mental health professional from Department of Mental Health. So that's their team. But again, majority of these calls, 911 calls, we arrive first. So if it's a police officers on scene, no medical issues, they don't think there's drug intoxication, I think it's pure mental health, they'll request a SMART team if one's available.
And if not, then it rolls into our territory, and then we just take them.
Often they may transport the patient by black and white, or they may call us, particularly if there's any medical issue. But more often than not, we end up rolling based on the initial response. So currently someone calls 911 and say they ran out of their medications, they're hearing voices, they want to harm themselves. We roll resources out there for obvious reasons. And LAPD may or may not be available to assist.
Okay. I think it raises some interesting questions about allocation of resources and how and utilization of resources, then what the end result is, which I think, I'm sure the LAPD has good reasons for why they need 17 of them, and they're fully utilized. It does raise questions in my mind about then, the kinds of stuff you're talking about. How many do we need? What does scale look like? But also, how do we interact with LAPD when they roll out on this stuff and we're there? As far as I know, we have no unified policy and procedure when it comes to LAPD, LAFD arriving on scene with a patient who is having a mental health emergency. And so my belief, my hunch is that we have either some misalignment of response there, or we end up exerting more resources sort of on the back end in terms of what happens with those patients. Do you have any evidence of this, or am I kind of off base on this one?
No, I mean, clearly, we're talking about better coordination of resources. Also, as per county and city policy, if the patient is deemed to be gravely disabled, our paramedics and EMTs have to transport that patient. At the end of the day, clearly we want to have better coordination of their efforts and our emerging efforts here. But even with the expansion of the SMART teams, I would argue our departments, our members are carrying the overwhelming, brunt of the responsibility for these individuals. And clearly I don't think we're meeting their needs by just taking them to the nearest ER. And having worked just about everywhere in town at LPS certified and non-LPS certified emergency departments, often these patients decompensate and do worse given all the stimuli of an emergency department with no mental health professionals to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to your point, clearly our plan is as we move, if we're successful moving forward with this concept, we would continue to partner and work much more closely with mental health unit from LAPD, as well as our partners with the county. But I think I would argue these are truly exigent circumstances based on all the reasons I mentioned that we need to move forward. And lastly, I would say, I don't think anyone would disagree what we're doing now clearly is not working based on the needs of the community nor the needs of these at-risk patients.
Yeah. So, I see this as we have kind of an external, internal, forces here, right? The external forces are things that are mostly out of our control, which is county policy, hospital capacity, and in which case our role there is advocacy and talking about what we need and building partnerships. Who is our liaison on these issues? Who is our designated liaison on mental health and homeless issues?
So we don't have we now have a battalion chief working in emergency operations who's running point with the homelessness initiative.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mental health, it's really fallen amongst the EMS group in the department. With the EMS Bureau, our plan is to have a public health division, which would focus on the issues of homelessness, on recidivism with super users, on mental health patients, because a growing issue, disproportionate impact on our call load and a workload of our members.
Yeah, and I think that is, I've advocated for that before. I think that's the right thing to do. I don't think we make nearly the progress at nearly the speed we need to unless we have some designated staffing who can be a consistent liaison to county health, hospitals, and LAPD. So I'm glad to hear that is in consideration. If I could also just recommend, as you reach out to the county, I know that Supervisor Kuehl's office, this is a big priority for her office around mental health and the homeless. And if you have not reached out to her office and given them a briefing, I suggest that you do so, because I think they could really be an ally in this, along with Dr. Katz. Looking at some of the internal questions, the public health division, a liaison for that's part of it. The training piece, though, I know our members all receive basic. Our EMTs get the EMT curriculum, our paramedics get the paramedic curriculum, while recognizing that we're not going to train them up to be, psych certified. Not that that's a thing, but I think you know what I mean. Certainly, I think there is room for training around interactions with people who have mental health. And my understanding at this point is that we don't do any of that. LAPD, Commissioner Ibarra and I have been started meeting with the LAPD, one of their commissions, subcommittees around some of these issues. they have a fairly significant training course for all of their officers around interactions with folks with mental health issues. Now, obviously, their interactions differ from our interactions. However, there are certainly areas in which I have to believe there are some commonalities in terms of when we interact with a patient with a mental health emergency, and how we interact with them. And this is a direct request from the field. And I hear this from our members in the field saying, we could really use some additional training around interactions with patients with mental health issues, whether that's safety precautions they take or, recognizing when you have a patient who's got, severe autism versus, a mental decompensation. It may not change the specific medical treatment that they do, but it certainly will inform the interaction. And so I would like to request that, in the next 60 days, that we think about what a training curriculum could look like. We don't have to invent it ourselves. LAPD stands ready to share this with us, and what can we pull from them? The other piece of this is I think it's really important, since we respond so frequently with LAPD, that we are operating from the same playbook as they are. We should both understand each other's operating procedures so we don't roll up at the same time and they're going this direction, we're going that direction, and the end result is that either the patient doesn't get the response, the care, the treatment that they should be getting, or it just continues to boost our call load and our response when in fact it could be something that they could be helping to handle. I also think that coordination is important because we both have a wall time issue. They've got a wall time issue, we've got a wall time issue, and they're both around mental health. And so that kind of collaboration I think makes us a stronger advocate for what we need. So the question around the training, I know Chief Zipperman has been in on some of these discussions, but him plus someone from your shop to really look at what's available there and what we can roll out for our members who are currently in the field, as well as folks coming through the tower to say, look, you are going to be dealing with mental health issues. It may be sort of a 2% of our total call load, but it is a much more outsized impact on your work. Here are things that you should be aware of when you roll out on these calls.
I agree with your points. More training is always a good thing. The only caveat is training time is a premium given how busy we are, but training is a good thing.
I get it, yeah.
Certainly in terms of recognition of at-risk patients and verbal de-escalation techniques. And clearly on the national level, if you look at the number of officer-involved shootings, it turns out that the suspect / shooting victim turned out to have mental health issues, speaks for itself. And then the issue of what's a psychotic break versus acute drug intoxication is challenging as well. But I don't disagree with any of your points, Commissioner.
Thank you. So perhaps we could get a report back in 60 days on what we believe an appropriate training would look like, how much time we think it would be, and I believe this commission could then weigh in on whether we want to make that a priority, given the scarce resource of training time.
Mark, one possibility. Dr. Walter Koppenrath, who started the UCLA Mobile Clinic about a decade ago, basically he teaches the undergrad public health students and also the medical students and the nursing students at UCLA de-escalation techniques of how to deal with the mentally ill, and I think it's a fairly short program, just a few hours and everything, where everyone is develops skills. So I can probably get you in touch with Walt, and then maybe he might know of others, especially in the county healthcare system, what have you, who could offer the same type of training.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's. I'll wrap it up, but just again, want to recognize the work you've done on this, the forward thinking that's happening right now. I think in our department, this is a culture shift for us to be thinking about what the public health needs are that we respond to, whether we want to admit it or not, and how much of our work that this represents. And thinking about how we can become more collaborative with the other stakeholders in this, whether that's LAPD or Department, DHS, whoever that may be, and that's really what's going to move us forward as a department to make sure that we are doing what we all came here to do, which is serve our community in the best way we can. So appreciation for the work. that's gone into this, and I look forward to hearing back from you soon on how we move this forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Epstein.
Move to receive and file item 5D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moving on to item 6, which is public comments. We have a card from Frank Lima from UFLAC.
Morning, Madam President, Commissioners. Frank Lima, President of UFLAC, and I'm not a 5250. Just came up here to clean up something that was, maybe said earlier in regards to the sick time and the drop. Commissioner Glazer kind of commingled the two. Just want to make it very clear that, our drop is doing what it's intended to do. Continue to recruit and retain employees. It's essentially eliminated disability pensions. And it's the cost neutrality to the city has not only been cost neutral, but money revenue. So I testified at the EERC the other day with a person from the Police Protective League and the DROP program. They're going to do no action on it right now. But it is a great recruiting tool for management. It's like a management's dream. A lot of these problems that we're dealing with, we didn't hire for about 6 years. So the excess sick time, it's real easy. You got to fund the budget. You look at a budget. There's that old saying from Joe Biden, show me the budget, we'll show you your priorities. And that's the mindset we got to get into in this upcoming budget season. But also remember, we work 56-hour work weeks. No other city employees do that. Other city employees, 2 weeks paychecks have 80 hours. Ours have 112 hours. And then you add on top, we're forced to work 48 hours of overtime per month. Okay? We have members that are tired, working at some of the busiest firehouses in the nation, and once in a while, they basically forced to use a sick day. So let's look at the totality of all the two, but not commingle them. Thank you.
Thank you. So, motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.